Hey everybody, Donkey Storm here, and today I wanted to take you through a Spires of Ascension plus 19. Um, this is my commentary as a Holy Priest, but I'm hoping that any healer can learn something from this run. This is on Necrotic and Sanguine, so also Fortified, so it's a pretty tough week. Not going to be easy. This is not a perfectly done key. We definitely make some mistakes here, but we do almost two chests this, so it was a pretty solid run. So let's get right into it. This is a pug, by the way, so in pugs anything can happen. Um, so let's get started here. It's pretty common that on a fortified week, well, any week, you're going to probably combine the first two packs. On a fortified week, it's pretty smart to lust. One thing you're going to want to really watch out for are kicks. A missed kick from the Goliath can be deadly. You don't have to include the Goliath in this poll, but I think we are going to. Also, the castigators casts need to be kicked. So we missed some kicks here, and there are a couple deaths, which is not the biggest deal in the world, since you'll respawn right here. So right away, the Demon Hunter takes aggro from the tank, so that's problematic. And as you can see here, the damage is just flying out. There's a missed castigator kick, so I actually have to use a mass dispel to get that off. There's another one, so you can see that that is really ruining our day. And then, oof, there goes the Goliath, and that kills the hunter, and then I end up dying too, so a little bit of a bumpy start, but like I said, not the worst thing in the world because we're about 3 feet from the respawn. We are going to clean this up. We don't lose too much time there. That's definitely something you can recover from, but the kicks were sloppy, and that's what happens. Let's see. So no more Goliath kicks are going to go through. I used Apotheosis and him on that pull, so I mean that's a pull where anything goes to survive. So coming up here to the top of the ramp, you can dispel the buff off of the Mender, and he'll drop his weapon on the ground. Sometimes people pick it up, sometimes people don't. Let's see, the Demon Hunter went ahead and grabbed that one. So, it's just nice to do. Those castigators are getting a lot of casts through, which is really straining my healing here a bit. I haven't been able to do too much damage this dungeon because all those missed kicks have just put me so far behind all the time. But we are able to keep people up here. DPS is looking pretty good. Everybody's at between 15 and 20k. The tank is even up in the 8 range. So yeah, necrotic sucks pretty bad. Monks are good at it though, because they can stagger the rate at which they'll get stacks, and they also have a pretty easy time getting away. So monk is definitely not a bad pick for a tank on a week like this. Alright, so we go up here, and here's Varuth. Pretty familiar with the Varuth dance by now, so you're going to stack up when he casts his fear. You're going to spread out when he does his bleed, and you only want that on one person. So people are getting pretty good at this. I don't often see more than one person get hit. We're going to try not to use cooldowns on this guy. Typically shouldn't need it unless you're stacking them up with other trash. So Varuth is going to go down. We're going to take our anima power. Let's see what we take here. So we're taking overflowing chalice. I mean, that's pretty much the end of your mana problems at that point. So this is a dangerous pack. You've got a Goliath in here. You've got a castigator. You got a Mender. And those casts are just not getting kicked. The burden of knowledge is, so you have to dispel those immediately. They can kill people very quickly. It's a dot that also does a big amount of damage when it actually lands. So as you can see, they're going off a lot, and that warrior just died from it. because they're just not getting kicked as often as they need to be, and that's really putting me in the hole here. So this monk is at 60% necrotic, so he's getting away, and then he drops his stacks. As you can see, I'm tracking necrotic on a weak aura. That's really important for you to know as a healer, because at some point your tank is going to become unhealable, and you don't want to waste mana trying to heal someone who's unhealable. And I definitely am guilty of that a bit here. Alright, so with that cleaned up, we've got our first boss here. The main thing about this boss from the healing perspective is watching your positioning, making sure that you're not going to be in the line of fire of the bird's missiles, or that you're going to get cleaved by that boss's frontal, and also keeping the tank alive, because that frontal that the boss does hurts a ton. I don't know if it's dodgeable or not. Some people say it is, some people say it isn't. It doesn't seem like something people can do reliably anyway, so I always assume they're going to get molly-whopped by that thing. One thing you see happening in this group a lot is they're taking damage from the beam between the boss and its pet. If you get in that beam, you get a dot on you, and it's pretty painful. So you're going to want to try and get the spear away from others, and just always watching where you're at. These trees are really a pain in the ass because they sort of block your field of vision, like that. So I'm just steering clear of that stuff, and healing people is needed. If you can do that, this should be a pretty easy fight. But as you can see, my group is taking a lot of damage from that beam. There's 3 people with that debuff on them right now. So this has become pretty healing intensive because of that. And the warrior is, or excuse me, not the warrior, the tank is stacking the mobs up to maximize damage on them, so they're not going to survive this phase, where one of them goes up in the air, and you just kind of get to take free pot shots on the other one. So down goes boss number 1. A pretty common thing to do here is to line a sight around this pillar so the tank will grab those jumping mobs. I'm taking the opportunity to drink because I'm not going to get targeted way back here anyway. So it's pretty common for the tank to take them about halfway down the stairs and then kind of pounce on them, so that when they do their jump, they're just going to jump backwards onto the stairs. And this guy does a decent job. From a tank perspective, it's not always the easiest thing to pull off, but he does keep them grouped up, so that's the goal there. The closer they are together, the easier they are to cleave down. There's a little sanguine going on here, but that gets knocked out real quick, and then you're typically going to need to pull 2 groups on the left and then go right. That seems to be the strategy for Spires these days. I'm willing to dip my toes in the sanguine for those mana orbs. For these ether divers, it's a good idea to let the cast stack fully and then dispel them, so you can get them all. And our tank is getting pretty high on stacks. He's at 60, almost 70%, and that dot hurts quite a bit, so he's getting out of there. And now we got a skirmisher trying to hang out in sanguine. That tank's gotten super duper low, and he was at almost 80%, but he lived, so we're good. You really got to watch your tank on this next pull. These cats will stun them and just do an absolute boatload of damage. So the tanks need to be ready with some kind of cooldown to prevent that. You can also just preemptively put your guardian spirit on them to make sure that they won't die. Mine wasn't up, so I didn't have that option, but if yours is, you can do that. So as you can see, he's taking a lot of damage here. I imagine he's going to start, I mean, you would kite this pull on a non-necrotic week. You really can't just stand in there against these things. So yeah, he's using Ring of Peace and getting out. And we're trying to do a little bit of damage and just make sure that he stays up. So he did drop his stacks. Even still, he can't really stand in against these cats, so he's keeping his distance correctly. And then these Praetor guys are pretty annoying. They just don't want to stay in one spot, and on Sanguine sometimes you get real unlucky and they'll just jump in a pool and heal themselves to full. I don't think that happens here. So going right is definitely harder and takes a little bit more coordination. So we're coming up on a double Goliath pull that can really make or break the entire dungeon after this next one. So this next one is a bird, a cat, and a Praetor. It's actually kind of deceptively painful pull on your tank because they get the dot from the Ether Diver and also from the cat. So you do got to watch your tank in this pull. This guy's doing a fine job staying alive, keeping an eye on those necrotic stacks. So I actually think this tank did a real nice job in this dungeon. So we're going to clean this up, and then we'll be on to one of the harder pulls in the whole place, which is the double Goliath. And you really should assign some kicks here. It's very dangerous to just assume that people are going to handle this, but apparently that's what we're going to do. So we'll see how many of these fists go through here. If you remember from the opening pull, so we do manage to get through this with none getting through, and basically just by out DPSing the pull. The hunter is doing 30k, the demon hunter and warrior both doing like 15, and the things just melted, which is fortunate because the longer that pull went on, the bigger chance something was going to go wrong. So I'm always relieved to see that pull over with. Again, these Ether Divers are pretty painful, particularly on necrotic. The tank just can't stand in too long against these guys. But your tank should definitely not be dying to this stuff. They might strain your mana a little bit if they try to get too ballsy. This guy's standing in for a long time. I actually have to proc a Guardian Spirit on him, which is a shame because now it incurs its full 3-minute cooldown, which is pretty rough and pretty unnecessary. I mean, he could have easily kited away there, so I'll say that's probably a mistake on his part. Having to use Guardian Spirit on a pretty trivial pull like that is definitely not ideal, and I'm going to want that up for some of these tricky pulls that are coming up here, and it's got on a full 3-minute cooldown here. So we got some more Ether Divers. I'm taking a moment to drink here while he grabs his spear because he forgot to grab it. Now we've got more Ether Divers, more annoying spear chucking enemies that don't like to stay grouped up. We're dispelling the weapon there. That Demon Hunter is definitely on top of grabbing those, so good for him, taking advantage of us being good on our dispelling. And things are rolling pretty good here. This is a really tough affix week. Sanguine and Necrotic have some pretty lousy ways they like to interact with each other. Since a lot of times the same thing you use to get mobs out of Sanguine are what you use to get away from Necrotic. So sometimes you won't have that stuff up when you need it. Haven't actually had a lot of success pushing keys this week, but this dungeon went pretty well. So again, he's up at almost 80% healing reduction. It's really getting to a point where I can't heal him, so I'm trying my best. I'm using Apotheosis, which might have been a mistake. I don't know if he would have died otherwise or not, but I pop Apotheosis here to keep him alive. And that concerns me a little bit, knowing what's going to come up next, depending on how we handle it. So this pull can be done a number of ways. one of the more common ones is to combine this pack and the previous pack, Spirit, and even possibly Lust it. Now, obviously, we opt not to do that because we already pulled the previous pack. But that can be done just fine. The other option for the spear is you can just hold it until the pack right before the second boss, which is a super nasty pack, and you can kind of cheese that one a little bit. So those spears are very valuable. So I think we're gonna spear right before second boss, which is kind of the safer play. And given our speed so far, I'd say that's probably a good choice. We didn't need to take any big risks here. You always want to make sure that the squad leader gets DPS down as fast as possible in any pack. And on these, finally a pull where we're sort of free to just DPS, since this is really not putting our tank in any danger. So these guys will go down, and then we'll get the very tricky pull before the second boss. You should always approach this pull on a fortified week, in my opinion, as if it is a boss itself, because it's much scarier than Ventinax is on a fortified week by far. So we are going to CC and spear here. We've got a frost trap out. I don't know if that's even going to go off because we're spearing. We're all doing as much damage as we can. So that spear ends and the squad leader's at 50% health. So not great. I don't know if maybe DPS was kind of holding cooldowns for the boss, but in my opinion, this is a blow all cooldowns pull. So we are going to make it out of here. And I'm again dispelling that weapon off. I don't know if the Demon Hunter is going to grab it this time. It's just going to sit there. But I like to give my DPS at least a chance to grab it if they want it. It is a pretty significant DPS boost. You can even grab it yourself and just kind of whack stuff with it if no one's going to take it. So we do manage to get these guys down. We got our Praetor being annoying, standing in Sanguine and getting bounced up and down by the volcanic plumage, so that's unfortunate. Definitely some lost time there. I'm just collecting these mana orbs, and then we'll head over to... No, we won't head over to Sagadon, so or will we? No, we're resetting the boss, and we're heading over to Sagadon. You can actually skip Sagadon without too much worry. In Spires, it will make the run through a for sure one shot, which it often is anyway, at least on a tyrannical week. But Sagadon is very skippable. Oros is actually skippable too because his speed debuff will not apply during the orb collecting phase on the last boss. So Oros is definitely on the table to be skipped. You could pretty safely skip both of these guys and be relatively okay, as long as you're on the spot with sidestepping the run through. But we are not going to do that. We are going to kill everything. So I'm taking Stone Ward here. We're going to move on to Ventinax, which has become a much easier encounter since they nerfed him. You only have 2 black orbs to watch for at a time. And this guy's just getting shredded. He's already at 60% health. DPS was really nice in this dungeon. So it's a good idea to position yourself in a way, like on the opposite end of the circle, so that all the orbs are in your field of vision, like as you can see me doing here. I want to make sure that those orbs are in my field of vision. It's not that important that I can see what the boss is doing when he does his recharge. I want to make sure the orbs So as you can see, I'm facing the orbs, not the boss, not the party. I want to make sure that I can dodge all those bolts as they come out, and hopefully I'm able to. So far, so good. So none hit in the first phase, and I don't know if we're going to have a second phase. He's already at 7%. So this guy got absolutely shredded, which is great. So Ventinax is down. For cool points, you got to jump and grab the angel mid-platform like that. And then we're heading up to the final area with 19 minutes to go. So we had 3 deaths here. I think they were all on the first pull. And ever since then, it's been smooth sailing. On this pull here, you can opt to put the Helion with the incinerator. There's definitely going to add quite a bit of difficulty to the pull. I think we are going to opt to do that. I don't know if it's the best idea since we're so far ahead of the timer, but I guess we're going for the +2 here. So we are going to grab the Helion and pull it into Incinerator Arcolith. So obviously you need to kick everything, and the Helion does a pretty fair amount of damage itself. So let's see the Demon Hunter putting Darkness down here. We're going to drop the Mass Dispel. Well, we weren't able to because we had to move. And things are getting a little hairy on the health bars here. But the Helion goes down, and Arcolith is going to follow. So, not too bad. This would be probably harder if it were Varuth. But for Incinerator, as long as you're hitting all the kicks, you're going to be good. So I do take Sanguinicer. Even as a ranged, I find that it does quite a bit of damage. I don't think it does in this particular dungeon. It probably would have been better to just take Champion's Brand, but I'm trying to squeeze out a little extra damage. So this skip can be done with anything that works in mists works here. So Mind Soothe, Imprison, and all that good stuff, or you can invis skip it if you don't have anybody to do that. So we're going to pull Oros. Like I said, Oros and Sagadon are both highly optional in this dungeon. Oros especially, I think, to actually dodge the run through only takes a couple steps. So it's very realistic to think that you might skip Oros here. And Sagadon basically, aside from putting a little more pressure on your tank, is just going to make that run through a one-shot, which is often the case anyway. So you can save a lot of time skipping those two. So Oros goes down. Oros gives absolutely terrible anima powers, so nothing too exciting there. And it's important for this part where your tank line of sights these usurpers to actually let the tank get to the pillar before you start running. A lot of people like to start running just slightly after the tank. Don't do that. You will die. Your tank will be fine. There's no reason for you to go that quickly. If you follow too closely behind it, they will turn their attention from the tank to you and kill you. And you don't want that. So wait for the tank to get behind the pillar. No good tank is going to die to those things. No mediocre tank is going to die to those things. So make sure you give yourself the room to get them out of the way. So this one's a little easier since we're already in position, and Sanguine can be a bit of a challenge here, but not too bad. Alright, so on to the next boss in here, Orpharon. The main thing from a healing perspective on this guy is after that Purifying Blast, the player who received it's going to get a pretty nasty dot on them. and you want to make sure that you're healing them up. And the other main thing to watch out for is if someone soaks all those orbs and doesn't use an immunity, they're going to take a load of damage, and you need to keep them alive. Other than that, this is a pretty easy fight. There's not a ton going on. You just stack up your orbs and then run away. Nice to use a little speed boost like body and soul to keep yourself out in front of that. And just keeping an eye on those health bars, whoever gets Purifying Blast. Now, in a fortified week, it's really not bad at all. On a tyrannical week, it will hurt quite a bit. So, it looks like the hunter is actually able to feign death it, so I think this has been getting cheesed a fair amount. Now, here, the boss is taking extra damage, so if you've got any strong damage abilities, you can use those. We see, looks like our tank is just soaking all those things up. He is taking a load of damage, so we're pumping heals into this guy to make sure he stays up. I actually end up using Guardian Spirit on him just to be safe because he's taking so much damage from that. And it does not proc, so we'll get the 1 minute cooldown on that. Now we're heading upstairs. Now on a fortified week, Devos is not actually the boss of this dungeon. The 3 trash mobs before Devos are the boss of the dungeon. So, because of that, we're going to want to head up here and make sure that we're lusting and using the spear on the 3rd angel, because that angel does a stacking debuff that makes you take more and more damage over time. We just want that thing dead, and then with whatever remaining lust we've got, we'll use on the first phase of Devos. So Lachesis doesn't do much. This is usually the one that you start with. She does this Diminuendo frontal cone, so the tank should just face her away and sidestep when the ability's cast. You have a ton of time to move, so really no danger on this mob at all. You should be able to do a little damage here, as your tank shouldn't be taking too much damage. Even on necrotic, this guy's having no problem staying alive here. And then it's just going to get sort of periodically harder as we go. So once Lachesis goes down, we'll pull the one on the left. That's the one that throws out the charged spears. So that's going to happen here in just a moment. Lachesis is going down. These things do have a lot of health on Fortified. And they give a lot of percentage too, to be fair. Astronos does the charged spear cast, so she throws a spear on the ground, and then that spear pulses out these bolts, kind of similar to the bird on the first boss. They sort of come out of the 4 apexes of the spear. You get used to it after a while once you've done it enough. So you just want to position yourself in a place where they are not going to go, like I've done here. So 2 spears have gone out. I can tell by looking at them like which direction the AoE stuff's going to come out from, so this is a safe spot. And it's also important to note that only 3 spears will go out at a time, and then any spears beyond that will cause one of the previous ones to go away. So you're only dealing with 3 spears at a time here. So Astronos goes down. These spears will not despawn, however, so we are still going to have to deal with them. You can see a couple of our DPS taking hits as they run over here. And then as we get on to Klodos, we're just going to spear, lust, burn. And as you can see here, Klodos is going down fast, because you can see that stacking damage buff here on my weak auras is going up and up. So we're taking 6% increased damage, and the dot itself is going up higher and higher. So this is a race against time. On a fortified week, you need to get this down. All right. So as our hunter said, easy. And I mean, once we get to Devos, it's pretty easy. This boss is, it takes a long time. It's a deceptively long fight. So even though we've got 2 minutes to go to chest this, there's no way we're going to hit that just because of the way this boss works. The only thing that you need to dodge is while you're dodging the run through, you're standing in the shield for the detonation, and then you're dispelling debuffs. So this boss is not particularly scary. Even on a tyrannical week, this boss is pretty manageable. You definitely don't want to get hit with run through. That can be a one shot. And this is why I was saying you could leave up Oros or Sagadon, because even with the slow, you're able to move fairly easily out of run through. I mean, you have all the time in the world to get in this shield, and then that slow actually doesn't affect you during the orb phase. So that's really nice. So if we had skipped Oros, we'd be moving just as fast as normal. So we grab an orb, you dump it into the spear, somebody picks it up, throws it, and as a priest, it's a good idea to have everybody stack on the spear. That's what I'm saying in chat right now. After this phase, so you can just mass dispel this big debuff off. And look at that. All clear. Good to go. And it's just rinse and repeat from there. So if you skip Sagadon, your tank will be taking a little bit more damage, and then that run through will become at that point an absolute 100% one shot. But I do think that Oros and Sagadon are both viable skips in this dungeon, maybe more so than anywhere else. So if you're just getting started with skipping lieutenants, this might be a good place to start with that. So we're going to go through this orb phase one more time, and then we're going to be good to go. So if you were watching the timer, this fight, this is a fortified week, like I said. It's already been about a minute and a half, and you can't really control the time of this phase. You can't DPS her during this phase, so you're going to need like a minimum of 3 minutes here to take care of this boss. Maybe a little bit less. We did burn her pretty good, but that is going to pretty much do it. So we end the dungeon with about 7 minutes to spare, so handily timed on a plus 19 on a week of pretty nasty affixes. So pretty clean run. I hope you guys learned something from that. If you did, if you want to see more, make sure to like and subscribe to the video, and I will see you guys next time.